All right, so this is part 2 of the Ayurveda anatomy lecture. So if you haven't watched part 1, I highly suggest that you go and watch part 1 first, but it's okay if you haven't. You can jump in here and then watch it after this one. So in part 1, we spoke about the 3 bodies, so the physical, the astral, and the spiritual body, according to Ayurvedic anatomy. And then we looked at the 5 koshas, which are the sheaths, and that's the physical, the pranic body, the mental body, the wisdom body, and the bliss body. And then we went through the 7 chakras, and then we looked at the 5 elements and how the elements relate to the 7 chakras and the 5 koshas. So that's what we did all in the very part 1 of this lecture. And today we're going to look at the Srotas and Srotamsis, as well as the Dhatus, which are our body tissues. And then we're going to look at the 3 energies of Ojas, Tejas, and Prana. So we will take off where we left off, which is at the Srotas and the Srotamsi. So in Ayurveda, the Srotas are what we call or can convert to channels. So they're pathways through which food, air, and other substances move throughout the body. There are 13 main Srotas in the body, including 7 large channels and 6 subtle small channels. So the 7 large channels, we call them the gross channels, and the 6 small channels, we call them the more subtle channels. So we're going to have a look at a brief overview of each of those Srotas. So the first one is called Prana Srota, and that governs the respiratory and circulatory system. Then we have the Udaka Vahasrota, which governs the water metabolism and the urinary system. And then the third one is the Anavahasrota, which governs the digestive system. The fourth one is Rasayana Vahasrota, which governs the hormonal and endocrine systems. So Julie, for you who works in women's hormones, you will be working a lot with the Rasayana Vahasrota because it governs the hormones and the endocrine system. And then the fifth one is the Raktavara Shrota, which governs the blood and the circulatory system. The sixth is the Mamsavaha Shrota, which governs the muscular system. And then we have the Mida Vahasrota, which governs the fat metabolism and adipose tissues. The Asti Vahasrota governs the bones and the joints. The Maja Vahasrota governs the nervous system and the bone marrow. And the Shukra Vahasrota governs the reproductive system. So again, if you're working with hormonal health, you're also looking at the Shukra Vahasrota. And then the Swera Vahasrota governs the sweat glands and perspiration. Again, if you're working as a personal trainer or in the fitness industry, this is one of the Shrotas you'll be working with. 12, Purusha Vahasrota governs the colon and our elimination, so our waste. And then 13 is the Srotamsi, and they're microscopic channels in the body that carry nutrients, hormones, and other substances at the cellular level. These Srotas are important to understand as they provide insight into the functioning of different systems and organs in the body, as well as the overall health and balance of the body. Balancing the Srotas is essential for optimal health and vitality. And Ayurveda offers various practices such as diet, herbs, lifestyle, and therapies to support this process. So supporting the channels, the Srotas and the Srotamsis. So as I mentioned, the Srotamsis, they're tiny channels that exist within the body at the cellular level. And these channels are responsible for transporting nutrients. So they transport all of our nutrients to the 7 dhatus, which are the tissues, waste, and other substances between the cells and the body's larger channels, such as the Anavaha and the Pranavaha Srotas. The Srotamsi are vital for maintaining the health and balance of the body's tissues and organs. The Srotamsis are divided into several categories based on their function and location in the body. So these include, the first one is Dhamani, which are the channels that carry the blood and the lymph. The Sira are the veins and the arteries. The Snayu are the ligaments and the tendons. The Sandhi are the joints. The Asti is the bones. The Maja is the bone marrow and nerves. And the Shukra is the reproductive tissues. The health of the Srotamsi is influenced by various factors, which we can guess, like diet, lifestyle, and environmental factors, because we know that they are what we can do to help balance and maintain health of the internal channels. When the Srotamsis become blocked or imbalanced, it can lead to the development of disease and other health problems. So to maintain the health of the Srotamsi, Ayurveda recommends various practices. And does anyone want to have a go at, we've sort of brushed over these earlier, but can you think a little bit more in depth of what are some ways that we can look after these energetic channels? But they're not just energetic channels, they're also functioning channels, because they carry nutrients, blood, plasma, lymphatic fluid, waste products, all of that. So obviously, if there's an energetic block or a physical block, then that can lead to disease in the mind and body. Does anyone want to have a go at what are some Ayurvedic practices that can help maintain the health of our Srotas and Srotamsis?
Well, definitely starting with nutrition.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah, definitely with nutrition. So a diet that's appropriate for your body type, so your dosha, and also your digestive capacity, so your Agni. So the Agni, the fire, will, depending on how strong your Agni is, because that fire helps to transform. So even at a cellular level, we have Agni in all of our cells, not just our digestion, but all of our cells, and it helps to transform those nutrients into functioning tissue and to feed the tissue, etc. Excellent. And Mel said breath. Yep, perfect, exactly. Breath work, because it works on the Prana Vaha Shrota, right? The respiratory system. So absolutely breath. Regular exercise and physical activity as well. And that's so good for moving the lymphatic system. And then we have practicing stress management techniques, such as what Mel said before, the breath, but also meditation and yoga, because the mana Vahashrota is the mind. So when we see the word mana, that is to do with the mind. And so that is an energetic channel, but also we know that our hormones are chemical messengers that can travel up to our mind, to our gut, to different organs and part of the endocrine system as well. Avoiding harmful environmental factors such as toxins and pollution, and seeking regular Ayurvedic consultations and treatments to identify and address any of the imbalances or the blockages in the Srotamsi. So even things like, Abhyanga, that really helps to move the lymphatic system and the circulatory system. So all of these things are helping moving the energy and the actual byproduct that the Srotas or the Srotamsi hold throughout the body, so that it's circulating throughout the body. So here's just a brief overview of what we went over for the Srotas. So again, the Prana one is Prana, so the respiratory. Udaka Vaha is the water metabolism. Anavaha governs digestive system. So when you see the word Ana, that is like food. So it's always to do with the digestive system. Rasayana governs the hormone and endocrine system. Rasayana actually means rejuvenation. So if you hear of Rasayana therapy, it means it translates to rejuvenation therapy. So it's quite interesting that the Rasayana Vahashrita governs that hormonal and endocrine system, because our hormones and our endocrine system really do rejuvenate our whole body. And the Rakta Vaha, so Rakta is always blood. So when we look at the Dhatus, you'll notice they have very similar names because the word Rakta is blood. Mamsa is muscular. So if you're doing exercise, you're working on the Mamsa, the muscular, you're also working on the Mamsa Vaha Srota, because it governs the whole muscular system and the coordination and the communication between the muscles. Meta, the word meta is fat or adipose tissue. So when you look at the Dhatu of meta, it means the fat or the fat system. But when we're looking at it from a Srota point of view, it governs the fat metabolism and the adipose tissue. Asthi is bones. So Asthi Dhatu is bones. When we're looking at it from an energy, a channel, the Asthi Vaha Srota governs the bones and the joints, the channels within that. Maja, always it means like bone marrow. And then we've got the Shukra, which is the reproductive. Sweda always means sweat. So even if we're doing Swera therapy, so we're purposefully making someone sweat as a therapeutic benefit, so going into a sauna or a steam box, it is Sweda therapy. So Sweda Vaha Srota, it governs the sweat glands, obviously, and perspiration. Purusha is Purusha sounds like poo, right? Governs the colon and elimination, Purusha. And yeah, Srotamsi, we know, are the microscopic channels. And again, the Srotamsi, what we spoke about, they're further broken down into these small little channels. They carry the blood and lymph, the veins and arteries, ligaments, tendons, joints, bones, bone marrow and nerves, and reproductive tissues. So Dhatus, when we use the word Dhatu, it's a Sanskrit word, and that refers to our body tissues. And Ayurvedic nutrition really talks about how important the nutrition is, the micronutrients and macronutrients, because when we make that into chyme, so we eat it and we chew it all up, and then it turns into a paste, it turns into a chyme, it then goes on according to Ayurveda, in a specific cyclical rhythm to feed these tissues in this type of order. So the nutrients, and that's why they say we are what we eat, but in Ayurveda we say we are what we digest, because if you have a strong Agni and you can digest the food and break it down into these micronutrients, it goes on to then feed every cell in your body, and every cell is made up, it is encompassed within these tissues. So the first one is the Rasa Dhatu, which is our plasma. It represents the liquid component of the body and is responsible for nourishing the body's cells and tissues. When we go into Ayurvedic cleansing, which we're going to be learning about very soon, is where we really work on that Rasa Dhatu tissue first, because the lymphatic system helps to drain all of the toxins out of the body. And that's why prescribing someone Abhyanga, like a oil massage, self-oil massage, is so important, because our lymphatic system, it only has like this automatic motor of like every 6 seconds, like the lymph moves 6 seconds, 6 seconds. So if we've got a sluggish lymphatic system, or our Srotas, then that lymph can become congested, and that means toxins become congested in our body. So when we're prescribing things like Abhyanga to our clients, we're helping move that lymphatic system, as well as different exercises, as well as different yoga poses, different breath work. We're moving all of that lymphatic tissue. The second tissue is called Rakta Dhatu. So again, Rakta meaning blood, and it carries oxygen and nutrients to the cells and tissues and removes waste product. So when we're treating Rakta Dhatu, we're treating the blood. And if we have things like rashes come up, a lot of skin issues, then we need to look at Rakta Dhatu, the heat in the blood perhaps, could be a Pitta disorder. So then we're treating the Rakta Dhatu. And then the third tissue is Mamsa Dhatu, which is the muscle. So we've gone lymph, blood, then to muscle, provides strength and support to the body's organs and tissues. Mera Dhatu, which is fat, provides insulation, protection, and energy reserves to the body. So in our modern world, we're always trying to reduce fat, we're trying to shred fat, but fat has a really important purpose. Obviously, we want to have balance of fat tissue. It really helps with our hormones and things like that. But we don't obviously want too much either. So it's about finding a nice balance when we're looking at Mita Dhatu, because it definitely has its pros and its cons, but we definitely need some Mita Dhatu. Asti Dhatu is the bone, providing the structural support to the body and protects the organs. So if there's conditions such as osteoarthritis, then we're looking at conditions of the Asti Dhatu. Maja Dhatu, bone marrow and nervous system, produces and nourishes the bone marrow and the nervous tissue. So any nerve disorders is impacting Maja Dhatu. So it's a disease of Maja Dhatu. Then Shukra Dhatu is the reproductive tissue. So it's responsible for reproduction and the creation of new life. So fertility issues, we need to look at the Shukra Dhatu. According to Ayurveda, each Dhatu is formed from the previous one in a stepwise process and is nourished by the digestive fire, the Agni, and the quality of the food that we consume. So if you were to have fertility issues, like you can see, according to Ayurveda, the Shukra Dhatu is right down in the pecking order. So we need to go back and think, have we nourished the plasma, the blood, the muscle, the fat, the bone marrow, and the nervous system to actually get to that reproductive system? When the Dhatus are functioning optimally, they provide the body with strength, vitality, and immunity against disease. However, imbalances or deficiencies in the Dhatus can lead to the development of disease and other health problems. So if you are deficient in Rakta Dhatu, anemia, right? Deficient in plasma, then that is also a huge issue with your detoxification process. Muscle wasting, you lose the strength. Deficient fat, you might have a lot of, like I mentioned before, hormonal issues, endocrine issues going on. Deficiency in the Asti Dhatu, the bone, we can see that with the bone as we age, it gets brittle and it breaks down. So as they get into that Vata stage of life, Maja Dhatu, we can look at nervous system diseases. And as I mentioned, the Shukra Dhatu, if there's deficiency in that, then leads to sort of fertility issues, impotence for males, different menstrual issues with females as well. So now when we're looking at Ayurveda anatomy, it's also really important to understand Ojas, Tejas, and Prana. So does anyone, it's up on the screen anyway, but does anyone have an idea of what these three subtle energies are responsible for and how they can be applied or seen in their own life? Sorry. I'm just reading the chat as well. So there's this a question: is reproductive last because the body won't conceive when not feeling safe? Yes, that's definitely definitely a great point. But when we're looking at it from the tissue point of view and being nourished, the time, the pace that we create when we digest our food and the nutrients goes on to feed the plasma, feed the Rakta Dhatu, feed the Mamsa. It goes on like in that cyclical way. And if there's deficiencies in any of those tissues prior, that might need some more absorption of those nutrients. And so by the time it gets to the Rakta tissue, no, not the Rakta, that's the blood, sorry, the Shukra tissue, it's not getting enough of that vital energy, that vital nutrition. And even like we're about to talk about the subtle energies, Ojas, Tejas, and Prana, that is also carried through the through the tissues as well. So by the time it gets to the Shukra Dhatu, you may be a little bit more depleted of that Ojas and Tejas and Prana needing that vital force for fertility. But yes, on that other aspect, on that metaphysical aspect, if the body isn't feeling safe, and that could be because it's not getting the full amount of nutrients, the full amount of Ojas, Tejas, and Prana, then it does shut down the fertility and the way that the body needs to conceive, including ovulation, because ovulation takes a lot of energy, and if you don't ovulate, you can't get pregnant. Or if it's an early ovulation and the egg isn't ripe enough, then the same thing, we can have fertility issues, and that can come down to the fact that the tissues prior haven't been nourished. So if the blood hasn't been nourished, it can't then go nourish those organs, right? Does that answer your question, Julie? Yeah, perfect. Awesome. So going back to Ojas, Tejas, and Prana, Ayurveda recognizes the importance of subtle energies in maintaining overall health and well-being. 3 of the most important subtle energies are Ojas, Tejas, and Prana. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about Prana. Everyone uses the word Prana, especially if you've been to a yoga class. A lot of you have even done your yoga teacher training, so you would have heard of Prana. And often in a yoga class, I'll talk about Prana being life force energy. But there is 2 other really important subtle energies, which is Ojas and Tejas, and we need all 3 of them, and we need to balance all 3 of them for optimal health and well-being. These energies are believed to be responsible for physical vitality, mental clarity, and spiritual awakening. Ojas is the subtle energy responsible for physical strength, our immunity, and vitality. So when we're feeling a bit under the weather, we're getting colds and flus, our Ojas is diminished. So we need to start to build our Ojas up. I know a lot of the women that come to see me who are postpartum, they are depleted in Ojas. Childbirth is a very big deal to the body. And so I love to build up their Ojas with different Ojas tonics and drinks. And some of those, just off the top of my head, a nice, beautiful Ojas building tonic might be warm milk blended with some dates and some cinnamon and nutmeg, and having that in the evening to help build that Ojas and that immunity, the strength, and the vitality. Ojas is said to be the essence of all bodily tissues and is responsible for promoting healthy aging, radiance, and a sense of overall well-being. So we really do want to enhance the Ojas in our life, right? Healthy aging. Who doesn't want good Ojas? Ojas is strengthened by eating nourishing foods, engaging in self-care practices, and living a balanced lifestyle. So some examples of Ojas building foods include almond, ghee, and dates. So when I do the Ojas tonic, I love to make it with almond milk or blend almonds in there, and dates, as I mentioned. And for some people, depending on their constitution, it can also be really helpful to put a teaspoon of ghee in that as well. And it's a really, really nurturing, nourishing, beautiful tonic to build that Ojas up. Ojas is an essential component of Ayurveda and is often described as the essence of the body's tissues, which I mentioned. It's also correlated with the sexual energy, as sexual energy is believed to deplete Ojas. So they say that if you are having too much sex, you can really deplete the Ojas energy. But if you're having, I mean, what's a good amount? But hey, if you're having a good amount of healthy sex in like a loving partnership, then it can really be promoting for your Ojas. So overstimulation of sexual activity will deplete Ojas, and a strong Ojas is necessary for healthy sexual function. So if you do some of you guys might work in men's health. If they have issues with impotence, then their Ojas is generally depleted. So they are not having healthy sexual function, and that's the same for women as well. If their Ojas is depleted, it's really hard for them to find that libido, that desire for sex, and have a healthy sexual function going on. According to Ayurveda, sexual energy is closely related to the Kapha dosha, which is associated with the water and earth elements. The Kapha dosha is responsible for stability, lubrication, and nourishment in the body. So if a female comes to you and they're saying they've got low libido, they're really dry down there, then we know that there is a depletion of that Kapha dosha and a depletion of that Ojas, right? It is also believed to be the primary dosha that supports sexual health. A strong Kapha dosha is associated with healthy sexual function and vitality. However, excess sexual activity or engaging in sexual activity without building Ojas can deplete the body's reserve of Ojas, leading to fatigue, weakness, and other health issues. Can you guys hear my dog snoring in the background? Really sorry if you can hear that. She's so loud. So Ayurvedic practices such as eating nourishing foods, again, engaging in regular exercise, practicing stress management techniques, because high stress can really deplete our Ojas as well. And also engaging in spiritual practices can help the support of Ojas and healthy sexual function. So there you have it. If someone's coming to you with sexual dysfunction, you want to look at building Ojas, basically. Tejas. Can anyone give me an example of Tejas? You can't hear us, not good. Of Tejas and how they're using the subtle energy of Tejas in their everyday life? I think a lot of us use it as entrepreneurs, as business.
Yeah, I was going to say just every day, just managing business and life, you know, like finding that balance and making sure that you have the energy. Like I know that I've just cleared up my brain fog, which means my Tejas would have been out.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the biggest thing is having enough left to be, you know, enough energy to run your business and run life and exercise and all of that stuff.
Absolutely. So right. And as you can see, when we start going through all of the subtle energies, it's like if one's out, generally the other one they're all a little bit out, right? So if the Tejas, if that brain fog is really coming about, it's like, well, is the Ojas also out? Because where's the strength, the immunity? I mean, there's no vitality there if there's brain fog. So we have to look at building all of these subtle energies. So Tejas is the subtle energy responsible for mental clarity, as you mentioned, intelligence and creativity. So if we're having real creative blocks in our life or in our business, we're not being able to process at that higher intellect and that clarity. And who knows what dosha is responsible for that mental processing. I can see Mel typing away or something there. She can't wait to write this one. That's it. Pitta. So Pitta is the dosha of transformation, right? So the subtle energy that is very much linked to the Pitta dosha is Tejas, because it helps us with that mental processing, that clarity. And as we just learned, Ojas is the subtle energy that's related to the Kapha dosha, and Prana, well, we can guess Prana is air, Prana is that life force energy. It is closely related to the Vata dosha. But back to Tejas right now. It is said that Tejas is the essence of all digestive and metabolic fires in the body and is responsible for promoting mental sharpness and acuity. So I think of Tejas as like that fire we need to process our mental capacity, the fire for our digestive system, the fire within the cells, getting the mitochondria in the cells activated. It's all of those things. Having a sharp intellect, if we think of the quality of sharp is like that fire quality. Tejas is strengthened by engaging in intellectual pursuits, practicing meditation, and consuming foods that promote mental clarity, such as Brahmi and Shankapushpi. Now, these are Ayurvedic herbs, but with Ayurveda, you can take them as herbs, but you can also use them in your cooking if they're available. And sometimes they're not available to us where we are, but you can certainly get them in herbal form as well. Tejas is associated with the Pitta dosha, which is characterized by the fire and water elements. When Pitta dosha is balanced, it helps to promote healthy digestion and metabolism, clear thinking, and emotional stability. However, when the Pitta dosha is imbalanced, it can lead to issues such as digestive problems, skin disorders, inflammation, anger, and irritability. So we can say that if the Pitta dosha is imbalanced, then we also need to assume that possibly Tejas, the subtle energy of Tejas, is imbalanced as well. And so how can we rebalance that? How can we start to work with this subtle energy so that we can gain more mental clarity? We can spark our intelligence, our intellect, especially if we've got a lot of study going on, exams going on, or we've got big business deals to make, or whatever that might be, even helping the kids with the homework. I find their homework requires a lot of my intellect at the moment. And creativity, where there's creative blocks, like how can we increase that Tejas? Like, let's have a look at what is blocking that. So the next subtle energy is Prana, and it's responsible for that life force energy, our vitality, and also our spiritual awakening. It is said to be the essence of all breath. Now, Prana isn't our breath, but it's within our breath. So a lot of times you might go to a yoga class and you hear the teacher saying, like, breath is prana, but really our breath is food and fuel for prana, because prana is life force energy. So even like a tree, it has prana because it's living. When someone is, and it's not just the breathing that makes them the living, it's that spark, it's that vitality. For instance, when someone is living and full of prana, they've got that energy, they've got the emotions, they've got that life force energy that makes them human, who they are. When that person is deceased, there is still a body there, but there is no prana in the body. So nothing is moving, nothing is functioning, everything is zapped out of the body. That's prana that is zapped out. Same for food. Like if we're eating fresh vegetables that you have got at the farmers markets, you can feel and see the vibrations of that food. It's full of prana and life force energy because it's had to grow to be that. And it's still rich in prana when it's really fresh. But if that was to rot, you're rotting all the prana out of it. If that was to be canned and put in the cupboard and it's just sitting in a metal can for a couple of years and you open it up, there's no prana in it. There's no life force energy. You can't then get the seeds from that canned fruit and plant it and expect life to grow because there's no prana in it. So pranic energy is more than just the breath, but it is part of the breath. So therefore, it is really strengthened by engaging in regular physical activity, because we engage in that movement, that breath practice, practicing pranayama, which is breathing exercises or just breath work exercises, and consuming foods that promote healthy respiration, such as ginger and black pepper, or foods that are just rich in prana themselves. So fresh grown food, fruits, vegetables, all of those type of things. It is often referred to as the life breath or the cosmic energy. And I like cosmic energy because it takes it, I guess, to what it really is. It's not just that breath energy, it's that cosmic energy. And it is responsible for sustaining life and promoting overall vitality and well-being. Prana is believed to be the subtle energy that permeates throughout the body, and it is closely connected to the respiratory system, obviously. In Ayurveda, practices that promote healthy respiration, like we spoke about, pranayama, yoga, are considered essential for promoting healthy prana levels. Healthy prana levels are also very closely related to our mental and our emotional well-being. So that is why when you're helping somebody who is really stressed or suffers from a lot of anxiety, even hormonal conditions that exacerbate that stress and anxiety, prescribing them pranayama techniques or breathwork exercises is really important, because we really need to move the prana in their body, but in a controlled way, because too much prana up in the head can cause too much energy in the head. So we want to slow down the breath, but we want to be able to move the prana throughout the body and use that as a way to help manage the mental and emotional well-being of a person. So when it is balanced, so when we do have balanced prana, it promotes mental clarity, calmness, and a sense of inner peace. And we know that we can get that through proper prescribed breathwork practices. Not all of the breathwork practices are for that specific outcome. So we've got to remember that we need to prescribe breathwork practices according to somebody's constitution or why they're coming to see us. But generally, a lot of the practices that I teach through the program promote mental clarity and calmness and that inner peace. But when prana is imbalanced, it can lead to issues such as anxiety, depression, fatigue, and a lack of motivation, because you're literally like just zapping that life force energy out of you, right? As I mentioned earlier, prana is closely related to the vata dosha, which is characterized by air and the ether elements. It's responsible for governing the movement and communication within the body. So that prana helps with that energetic exchange and communication within the body. Prana is considered to be the primary sub-dosha of vata. When you learn about the doshas, you'll also learn about the sub-doshas, the 5 sub-doshas of that dosha, and prana is the primary sub-dosha of vata. It's responsible for promoting the movement of air and energy within the body. So basically, when the vata dosha is balanced, it does promote that healthy movement and communication within the body, leading to optimal physical and mental functioning. However, when it's imbalanced, it can lead to issues like anxiety, nervousness, insomnia, and digestive problems, the same as when prana is depleted, because they are so closely related. They are one of the same, really. Ayurvedic practices that promote healthy pranic levels are therefore very essential for balancing the vata dosha and prana. So if you do have someone with a vata imbalance, you may also be looking at that subtle energy of prana and how to manage that. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Harmony, just so I'm just trying, things are falling into place, I think. So I have a lot of clients and friends with ADHD, and so for someone like that, which like it feels like they're like everything in the whole body is off balance, but for somebody like that, you would actually work more on the mind and across the doshas and these as well, and try and calm everything down to then hopefully filter through to the rest of the body. Is that how?
Yeah. Generally, ADHD is generally the vata dosha is completely out of balance, because the vata dosha governs the central nervous system, and someone with ADHD, their thought patterns, they're very quick. So if you think of the qualities of vata, which is ether and air, and the qualities of those, that's their thought patterns are very can be erratic, can be very quick,
Yeah.
I mean, there's different types of ADHD too. There's like the hypervigilance where they can be very engrossed and completely
Focused.
hyper focused, exactly, and then they can also be hypo focused. So
Yeah.
there is different types, and that will also play into which dosha you're treating. But for the ones that have sort of got that scattered mindset, and sort of all over the place, they can't ground themselves, you're really looking at being able to manage the vata dosha and the prana, the pranic energy. But also pitta comes into play, because remember that pitta is there for that sharp intellect, that transformation, the processing of the mind. And
Yeah.
with ADHD, that isn't happening either. So that the subtle energy of Tejas is responsible for the mental clarity that they're not getting, and possibly that sharpness with the intellect.
Yeah.
Not saying that ADHD people can't be extremely intelligent, because they are, but it's
Yeah.
just the communication pathways, which Pitta dosha is responsible for, can get misfired, or they're just not linking properly.
And because then I find they're very high or they're very low, because they're either full of that really not so much high energy, but that racing mind energy, and then they're just exhausted.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's kind of no balance at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And so routine is really, really important for ADHD when you're looking at it from the Ayurvedic perspective. So you're working with Vata and Pitta dosha, you're working with all of the subtle energies, especially the Pranak and the Tejas. And so getting them into a regular routine, even though they might not like that at the start, because they're very vata, so right, routine, they're like, they don't want to do that, but it's the best thing for them, like to get them into a routine. For them, I wouldn't be prescribing any breath work like Kapalabhati or any of those sort of new age breath works where they go and hyperventilate for a half an hour, an hour, because that is only that's really triggering for the central nervous system. So for someone with the ADHD, they would be more using breathwork techniques that are very balancing, like Nadis, alternate nostril breathing, box breathing, different techniques like that, that can really get them into their body and to really get them concentrating on the breath and to be in that moment. Whereas their tendency might be to do more of those extreme breathwork practices, because a lot of ADHD people like the thrill and the challenge of those extreme practices.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, good question though. I like it. And now we come to the Nadis. So have you guys heard of the Nadis before? Does anyone have an understanding of that? Okay. So the nadis refer to the subtle energy channels or pathways that run throughout the body. Very similar to, I guess, meridian lines when you think about it from a TCM perspective. Nadis are considered to be the pathway through which prana, life force energy, flows. And again, just like meridians, they in TCM we call it chi, which is pretty much the same thing as prana, that life force energy. And so from the Ayurvedic perspective, they've said that prana flows through the nadis, so these energetic channels, flows in the body, influencing our physical, mental, and emotional well-being as well. And when we look at different mama points, which are very similar to acupuncture points, the mama points are specific energetic points where the prana is flowing through the nadis. According to ancient texts, there are said to be 72,000 nadis in the body. So I don't know how they came up with that number, but that's what the text said. Although the three most important nadis are the Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala. So you may have heard of these terms, especially if you've done yoga or you've done your yoga teacher training. Often a lot of yoga teachers will talk about the Sushumna, Ida, and Pingala, especially, just got a mind blank. That type of yoga, Kundalini yoga. So the Sushumna is the central channel, and it runs from the base of the spine to the crown of the head. So it's a very central channel, and it's associated with spiritual awakening and higher consciousness. The Ida and the Pingala nadis, they run parallel to the Sushumna and are responsible for the flow of energy in the left and the right sides of the body, respectively. The Ida is related to the moon energy, and the Pingala is related to the sun energy. So Ida, moon energy, is that feminine, the yin energy, and Pingala, related to the sun energy, is more that masculine energy, that yang energy. And that's so the breath work I mentioned before, called Nadi Shodhana. So that's that alternate nostril breathing. It's because it is activating both the flow of the moon and the sun, the feminine and the masculine, or the yin and the yang, whatever words you want to use to explain that. But that's what it's doing, because you're breathing in through alternate nostrils and out through the alternate nostrils. So that one is a really good practice for just bringing the body back into complete balance. And the other thing is, if you did want to prescribe, say someone is very has a lot of sun energy, and they're like possibly your ADHD person, right? Say they've got a lot of that sort of sun energy, that yang energy, then yes, you could do alternate nostril breathing, but you could also just breathe in and out of the moon energy nostril to sort of balance more of that side, to activate more of that side within them. So it's about really, Ayurveda is really looking at the individual and what they need on an individual basis, because we're all so different, and the depletion or the excess of subtle energies, of doshas, of elements within us is going to be different from person to person. And so it's really important to start to recognize that in people, so you can prescribe them the right things that are going to help them come into a more balanced state. And so that is it. And I will leave you with: the body is a field of energy, intelligence, and consciousness. Through the practices of Ayurveda and yoga, we can learn to access and channel this energy for optimal health and well-being. So there you have it. That is the Ayurvedic anatomy. So if you did not watch part 1, please go watch part 1. We will talk about all of the, like I mentioned, the koshas, the 3 energy bodies, and through the dosha module, you also learn about the 5 sub-doshas, but I think it would be really good to even go more in depth on those in one of our calls as well. Do you have any questions?
I don't think so. I'm good.
You're good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alrighty.